Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. Before we begin, just to let you know, the session will be recorded and everyone is in listen-only mode. But if you have any questions, please type them into the questions pane and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. I'm Hella Schwartz-Grossman, Marketing Manager at Worldox, and joining me today are Frank Jones and Sandy Johnson of Legal Software Connection, John Rock and Peter Brannigan with DoxAdvisors, Rick Bernauer of Cytek Corporation, and John Heckman of Heckman Consulting. We're joined by this great group of our inner circle resellers with collectively over 100 years of experience in implementing Worldox. And today's roundtable is a conversation with the panelists about their favorite standard display layouts for Worldox and how the right look increases functionality and productivity. We are very excited they are here today, and I would now like to hand it over to Rick to start us off on today's session. And Rick, it is all yours.
Thank you, Hella. Good afternoon to everyone. Wanted to go through and give just a short introduction to talking about the Worldox interface and the appearance of the software. When we customize setups for people here at Cytek, we have certain things that we'd like to go through and set as far as how the screens look and the interface works. And as we talked as a group here of the consultants, resellers of Worldox, we thought it might be good to be able to give you some insight into the different approaches we have and the reasons for it. And, you know, it's not just, you know, why should you do it? It's not just because it's nice to set everything to a nice autumn colors on your screen and you can kind of feel festive during the holidays. There's real reasons to be able to do it that make the program easier for users to have their attention called to sections of the screen, easier to be able to see things if we set the fonts in a certain way. So what we're going to be doing is going through and trying to make some of those clear to you as the changes that we can do. And then also to go through and show you how can you make them. There's a lot of different things that can be done out there, but we'll try to run through some of them. Hell, if you could go ahead and change to the next slide. So some of the things we're going to be talking about out there is, for example, the document list in Worldox and how you can customize that, the different types of looks, whether you like the list or the tile view, but also things you can do as to the appearance of it. There's the display pull down menu that's in Worldox where we can customize the interface and the colors or change you know, the file view editing fonts, things like that to be able to make it more usable. We can turn off or hide certain features or parts of the interface so that the screen gets simpler and easier for your users to understand what's going on when they first start off. Or you can turn those on and off very quickly to use them only when they're needed, but they don't take up screen real estate at other times. And then things like editing the buttons, or editing and changing your bookmarks and the colors. So each one of the consultants today is going to be going through and sharing some of the things that they've looked at. And we hope that it's a benefit to you and makes Worldox more usable. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Okay. All right, Rick, thank you very much for the introduction of the topic and explaining the why and the reason why we decided to cover this today. And next up, we have John Heckman. And here you go, John.
Okay. Do you have the other one with the templates on it?
Yes, we do. We'll switch to that one.
No,
that one.
There was one with
okay.
This one. Okay, that's where I start. The initial Worldox search templates are, in my opinion, a little bit cluttered. So I always try to make them somewhat simpler. I start out by putting the name and text and file next to each other because that's logical when people want to search. They want to search either by the name or text and file. On the default screen, there's an option called user initials. That's wildly confusing because if you ask an attorney who owns the document, they'll say the partner in charge or the attorney that's working on it or whatever, they own the document. But the owner in Windows is simply the last person that used it. So owner initials has nothing to do with whoever owns the document, in quote. So I always change that to last used by, because that's what it is, in fact. And then down at the bottom, I think today, many firms don't really need both author and typist. They tend to be the same. I think that's a throwback to way back when. I was thinking about this, and I remember one time, it must have been 20 years ago, we were interviewing a firm, and they said, oh, such and such an attorney, he doesn't use email. I said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, I print out all his emails and give them to him so he can read them. That's author and typist in my view. So that's the first thing. The second thing I do is set up a search template for email. And it's the same as the other one, but I put email to, from, and address, which is either to or from. And then also put in either a doc type of email, or if firms don't use it that way, maybe a doc ID of .msg messages. The beauty of the email in Worldox is you don't need to know the person's address, email address. You can put in any part of their name. So you could put in John or Paul or Frank or last name or whatever, and it will find them. Some people may want to have other templates, but those are two that I use all the time. Now if we could go back to the first slide, Noah. Backwards to the first slide. One more. There you go. And then you've got the issue of how you want to display your documents. Again, the Worldox default is basically useless. It sorts by description and so forth. I always have it sort by date modified because that's typically how people work on documents. They're looking for something that they worked on recently. And then in the column displays, I typically put in client description and matter description. As people may or may not know the client matter codes, but they'll know the description, and then also doc type. And I have it sorted by in descending order by date modified. Different firms may adjust this slightly, but what you want to do is get a standard setup that you roll out to everybody, and then other people can change this if they want to. And I associate that with the first template that we saw before. And I have a second display, the email display, which is associated with the email template and is similar to the other one, but shows you the to and the from in the email address. So you can immediately see who the email is to or from. Okay, then the next slide, Ella. Next slide, there we go. This is a little funky one. If you create a comments column, you can sort by it. So if you have imports of a large number of documents or e-discovery or a client has given you a whole bunch of documents and you import them, and in the comments it always says copied from, et cetera, date and time. If you sort by comments, you can maintain the original structure of the thumb drive or whatever it was that you got the documents from. You can retain that original structure in alphabetical order. So it's like going through the documents in Windows Explorer. And people may be importing hundreds of documents, and they want to look at them in the order that they originally were, and this lets them do that. Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, John. We will now just skip past this one, and next up we will hear from Sandy and Frank from Legal Software Connection, and I think Sandy mentioned she was going to go first. So.
Okay, so we tend to let people decide kind of what they want as far as colors and buttons and things like that, because what I have found is everybody's different. And like Rick said at the beginning, you know, some people will change to fall colors, and then Christmas, and then Easter. Thank you. But what you need to think about is have it so that it's good for you, okay? Because colors are very, very different for everybody. And what you want to do is make sure that the colors are easy on your eyes. And as far as the columns, of course, make sure that you have the things that you need to see. Now, there is one thing, however, that when I train on this, that people tend to go, oh, that's cool. And kind of taking from John's idea of putting the email columns up, what a lot of people like is to put the email information on the property line. So if you didn't know, you do have a property line, which is under the customize button and the file list, okay? So if you go down to the bottom where it says property line, you just left click like you're doing on a column template, and you can add what I have there is the email to, email from, one of the dates, and then also attachments. And then as you can see in the screenshot, you can see that information below the email. But if it isn't an email, you don't see the extra information. Lawyers tend to really like that. And then, of course, you can change your colors, et cetera, et cetera. But that is one thing that I have found that when added, people tend to really like that. Okay, I think it's on to you, Frank.
Thank you, Sandy. So the next screen there, Hella, please. So I think Sandy and I have something in common. We kind of have a similar color set. I do like having a soft interface of different, subtly different colors and fonts. I think that is very important. But like we've talked about in so many of these webinars, I think less is more. So when I am showing you my screen here, some things to point out. I like having as few buttons as possible up on the button bar. I think less is more. Put the ones up there that are absolutely useful and remove the clutter with everything else. I tend not to have the pinned bookmarks display because I think that's taking screen real estate. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second. You'll notice that I happen to have doc ID below the description. I just like the way that sets itself out and kind of creates a natural separator line on that list. And that's also a change, Sandy, in the property line, is that?
Yes, that's a default. Right. So if you don't have it as a column, it'll go into the property line.
Now, I also like having the preview panel open, as you can see on the right. And lastly, I like having the navigation panel pinned open on the left. At the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that I don't have a default bottom tab set. I like having that off. So let's go to the next screen. Now, one of the buttons I was revealing was the pinned bookmarks button. And I think that's a great toggle to toggle on and off. So in this screen, I've clicked that pinned bookmarks, and now it's revealing my pinned bookmarks. You'll notice that there's not a whole lot of those. It's kind of fun to look at some users, and you'll find out they have rows and rows and rows, right, everybody? You've seen that at some users. And you just have to, oh boy, that's taking a lot of screen real estate. And that's kind of why Worldox put that feature in GX4 as one of the flyout tabs on the left. So it leaves pinned bookmarks to me for things that are crucial. Some may be public to everyone, many may be individual to you. But on this screen, what I want you to notice is the pinned bookmarks that we have a little circle or rectangle around at the top. Let's go to the next screen, please, the last screen. Those pinned bookmarks point out a couple of them. Correspondence, discovery, filings, no projects. What those are accomplishing is one click to filter a list, the list you have on the screen, in the same way you could do if you did turn on the filters tab at the bottom. But I find that it's far more effective to not have to hit the filters button and then click little check boxes, tick those to limit the list. That can be complicated for many people. If you take the crucial ones, put them in your pinned bookmarks, they become one click to filter that list in a simpler way. I think that's all I had to say today. Thank you, Hella.
Can I make one more comment before we turn it over here to the next? What I have seen too at a lot of sites that have upgraded from GX3, especially GX4, is they will have the buttons going all the way across the screen. So what you folks need to think about is some of those buttons you can remove, you know, like checked out, checked in. Who checks out documents anymore? Those types, so that you get a much simpler button bar. And that's just coming over from your GX3 settings. Okay, now I'm done.
Okay. All right. Sandy and Frank, thank you so much for covering the property lines and how to hide and show the bookmark bars, and then the bookmark filters, and how that can really benefit and improve the user experience. So we will move on. And next up are Peter and John from DoxAdvisors, and I will put up the slide and they will start to tell you what they would like to explain.
Peter, why don't you address our generic look, we call it?
Okay, so here, this is our generic look, and you can look at it afterwards. The beauty of having all of these different VARs on and resellers is we learn from each other as well. So we didn't invent all of these. The yellow came from John Heckman. The filters at the bottom you see is green. That came from Van and from Baker Cadence. Some of the other things we've adopted ourselves. Today, John's going to talk about the left-hand navigation part of it, and I'm going to talk about the top right, the buttons. And we'll see that there is a different philosophy sometimes, or options. We agree on a lot of stuff, but then it's all subjective to some of this stuff. And there are different philosophies, and we'll talk about that in a few seconds. But yeah, so this is our general layout. You'll see the filters at the bottom we think is crucial, and we always turn that on for people who recommend to be turned on. And then we'll let John talk about the navigation first.
Okay. Why don't you go to the next slide, Hella? So the navigation panel, you've seen it in several slides already. Frank's slide has it open and pinned. Peter's, the previous slide had it opened and pinned. And if yours is not displaying, this red arrow will point to the little blue arrow at the top of the navigation panel. And if you click that, it will open up the navigation panel on the left-hand side. Go ahead and hit the next slide, please. So once you hit that panel, the screenshot on the left is open in what we call the list view. And you can see it showing favorite matters, client files. It shows City of Mesa and the general, and it's listed by client code, then description, then matter code and description. And there's two views that you can use once you open that navigation panel, and it's called the list view or the flat view. The screenshot on the right is the flat view. and the client file City of Mesa general matter is shown in a darker gray color in the top. So there are two preferences there. There's also a refresh button. If you look on the screenshot on the left, next to flat view button, it has refresh and it has a sort. So you have some options as to how you can display information in that navigation panel. Next slide, please. You can choose to select the pin at the top to have the navigation panel be permanently displayed, or if not, you can pop it out as you need it. There's four main sections that we typically use, and the left screenshot shows the favorite matters. The next one, number 2, shows favorite files. So as you go downhill and you see the other labels below the window display, you have other options that you can display in that navigation panel. The third one is bookmarks. So as Frank just said, you can pin your bookmarks, or you can hide your pinned bookmarks. You can also see them in the navigation panel as well. So you don't necessarily have to pin them to the bookmark bar. You can come over here to the navigation panel, open it, and view them from there as well. And the fourth option there is to view cabinets. And the cabinets is basically a way to drill down to the individual client matter level. And you'll start at the cabinet level. You'll go to the active files, and then you'll come into your numerical listing of your clients. And then underneath of each of your clients, you'll see all the matters. We often get calls or emails about there being matters in a client file, but they're not being displayed in the navigation panel. And Worldox does not do that until the first document is saved in a matter. So in this situation, in the fourth screenshot on the right, in the Nathan management client 0001, it only shows about 8 matters, but in reality, there's maybe 10 in the time and billing system. But until we create them, until we save a document to that matter, you will not see a folder under that cabinet. Go ahead and hit the next slide, please. So there's I call it the tools icon at the bottom of the navigation panel. And if you click that as seen in the red arrow in the left screenshot, it then opens up a submenu on the right and allows you to configure your tree tabs. And here's where you can change what you see and the order in which they're displayed. So in my situation, the middle red arrow shows the check marks by what I see in my navigation panel. And over on the third red check mark, it shows you the way that you can organize them. So again, many different hidden preferences here that you can take advantage of so that you can make this a more personal experience for you. Next slide, please. We always, I think everyone on this will say that one of the challenges we always have is we make a change to the file list, and then we come back the next time and that change wasn't held. And in GX4, it's a lot easier to make a change in the user interface and save it. So over here on the screenshot on the left, I've opened up the navigation panel and I want to keep it expanded. So what I do is I click the gear icon, which is the red arrow on the left, and that displays the screenshot on the right. And it says, make this my favorite view. And once you click that, make this my favorite view, that will then save the file list window for you so that each time you come back to it, it will display the same. There's also another little tip that we all discussed on our call, and the navigation panel has 2 settings on it. One is that it expands automatically so that you can hover over into the navigation panel and it'll expand all the text to its full to its full length. And then when you move your mouse back over into the file list window, the navigation window compresses again. And that's the way that we like to do it. And again, it saves you real estate in your file list window. Next screen, please. And I would like to turn it over to Peter.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is the buttons at the top. And you may have heard what seemed like a contradiction, and Frank was saying delete some of them, and Sandy, and get rid of them, and keep it very clean. And I'm going to show you some that are very useful and advise you to maybe add some more buttons, but they're not actually contradictory, because one key thing Frank said was only have as many as you need and are useful. And that's different for all of us. You know, which buttons you're going to have. So these are 5 that you should definitely consider having in that interface. And again, if they don't work for you or you don't find them useful, don't put them there. Only pick the ones that you want. So if you see on the top left, we've got the 5 buttons we're going to cover: create, open file, navigation, add, and email. And then you see a white space to the right. That's where you can add any buttons. If you right click there, there's a whole Aladdin's cave of buttons that you can choose from. Which equates to all the things on the menus, all the things you can do when you right click on a file. Almost all of those things are available in a button. So, so we'll take them in order, and we'll go through. The first one is the create button, as we see here. And what that's going to do is create a task. So you can highlight any file and click this button. And once you do that, it's going to pop up this interface where you can give yourself a message. Make sure to send this retainer to the client for signature. You put a due date for yourself, and then a reminder with a time. And if you do all that, it's actually going to pop up in your Outlook calendar at that date and time for each of those, for the reminder and also for the due date. You'll get reminders. So it's a thing that just be paid for in Worldox. They used to charge you extra for that. It has recently, not too long ago, been included for free, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. Now it's on the menu, but the advantage of the buttons are they're kind of in front of you and they remind you of things. Because there's so much goodness in Worldox, you forget what's hidden behind some of the menu options, even though they're there. So this kind of just like leaving your keys beside something you want to bring to work in the morning so you don't forget it. At least they're there and obvious, and you can use it. So that's create a task. It's going to automatically create it as a task in Outlook. And a lot of people don't know that that's there actually. So next slide, Hella, please. So the open file location, you have heard on a previous webinar, we showed that and why it was important, but just to reiterate, if we look at the bottom, we see a file list of returned from some search. And we see there are different clients here, 20,000,003, different matters, 100, 1110, because we may have been looking for a text in file or some kind of research on a doc type or whatever it is. So we've got a mixed list of things, but you can highlight one of these. And if you enable that open file location as a button, you just click on that button and it's going to navigate right into that matter. So some people would typically do edit metadata there and go get the client matter number and do direct access. I mean, that's 5, 6, or 8 clicks of buttons and typing. This is a single click, which is my general philosophy. The more single clicks you have, the happier you'll be and the more you'll love Worldox. So it's a very powerful one, and again, we went that in greater detail on a previous webinar. So that's the open file location. On the right side here, we see the next button, which is the navigation panel. Now, John had a lovely arrow pointing to that little blue arrow, but it's a bit like, you know, you got to be a marksman to get it sometimes because it's so small. So you got to be pretty accurate with your mouse. So to save that, if we put a button which is available up top, it's a much larger target to click on. You know, it's like having a 3-foot wide hole playing golf. It's a lot easier than a small hole. So it's not doing a lot of functionality except hiding and showing the left navigation panel, but just making it easier. Again, not for everybody, and you may view that as a waste of space, but hey, for those that want that and do that a lot, that's a very convenient way of doing it. Next slide, Helen, please. So they add the bookmark. It does put it into that pinned bookmarks area. And that basically means anywhere you get a search result. For example, a partner may want to know how many retainers were signed since January 1st. So they could set up a search that says from January 1st of this year, show me all the fully signed retainers. And then they could just do that search once. And then if they use this add a bookmark, they could just add that into the bookmarks area that says this year's retainers. So if there's only 20 after 3 months, they're probably in trouble. If it's 500, then the business is growing and they're doing well. It's almost like a report. But there's a very easy way to add into the pinned bookmarks area. Obviously, you can right click up there and get the same thing. But again, a lot of people don't even know that or aren't aware of that. So putting the bookmark, the button up there just kind of reminds them again. So another one to consider. I think that's one of the most productive ones that I use personally. So that's highly recommended. The next one on the right is the email button, which is always there if there's a connection to Outlook. So it's already in your list almost certainly. So why did I add it here? 2 reasons. One is you can reorder the buttons, and the email is usually in the middle of all the other buttons and lost. And again, it's that old theory of trying to pinpoint it to click it. And because you're doing a lot of emails probably, you should move that button over to the right, and just do that by right clicking on a button and say move right, and keep moving it over until it's the last one. And that's true of all these 5 buttons. We want them all to be the right hand side, because this is kind of the stuff that you've chosen that's effective for you. So you just want conveniently to have it towards the right. So, but there is one thing to point out about that. So once we put it on the right hand side for convenience, when you click it, you've got 3 options, the same as you've always had: a full copy and a Worldox file list, which is a project or an encrypted container. But there's a new feature was put in a few weeks ago. In the second one, in a Worldox file list, you'll see something if you've updated to the latest build, and you'll see down below, there's a new option to attach a document as well. And what this is about is when you emailed before, you might put a full copy for the external users or the people on the distribution that don't have Worldox. Then you had to go back in again and reattach the project file or the Worldox link separately. So you're doing 2 actions all the time. And all of our clients do both of these. The other example is an attorney out for lunch. If they're out for lunch, they can't see the link on their phone, but they can see the full copy of the file. So it may not even be external people. But anyway, there's a lot of times when you want to put both a link and the attachment, and now that's been added in here where you can do 2 of them in one shot. If you do the attached document as well, if it's a single document, you'll get a project that opens the one document and the document. And if you do multiple 3 or 4 documents, you'll get a project that returns all 4 documents, and you'll get the 4 individual documents attached as well. So a really cool new feature that's been added that just is buried away in there, but I think a lot of people will find that extremely useful. And I think that's the end of my slides, I believe, Hella.
Okay. One thing, Peter,
Okay.
A lot of people don't even know that you can send an email from inside of Worldox, because everybody is so used to living in Outlook, that's all they ever do. And it's useful to start out by pointing out that they've got another option, which can also be useful if they're having trouble with their Outlook link or something. So It's useful just letting people know that this is available at all, never mind the new options.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay, yes, Peter, that was the last slide you guys had. So Peter and John, thank you for showing us how to work with the navigation panels and the buttons. And I'm going to put all of your contact information on so that, everybody can take a note and note down and get in touch with you if they have any questions. I'm checking on the questions. Nobody has entered anything. I guess you guys covered everything really well of what you had to show today. I don't know, do any of you have any additional comments or suggestions on what what you guys showed today?
Just I think to reiterate what several people have said, and that is that to the extent that you can simplify things and make it so that it's just one click or easier to follow, it's not just a question of, you know, seasonal colors. It actually gives you an increase in productivity. And that's the whole point of all this.
Okay. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else to add, or we're kind of at the end, then I just want to say thank you to all of you for participating. As mentioned, the session was recorded, and we'll post a link on our website. Anyone who signed up will also get the link sent directly. And I thank everyone for attending the webinar today, and I hope you'll join us for future sessions, usually on Fridays at 2 p.m. And check the website, because we have a list of what's coming up, and I hope everybody has a good weekend. And thank you all again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.